So this is a story about how the Democrats are the lamest possible alternative to the Republicans. So allow me to explain. Senator Chris Murphy decided to take to Twitter yesterday in a long thread talking about the Trump administration's policy vis-a-vis Venezuela. Something we've talked about a good deal here, something I've been incredibly critical of. The bottom line is, and you all probably remember this, there was essentially a U.S.-backed coup attempt. They all backed Juan Guaidó to kick out Nicolas Maduro, after there was a whole flare-up. Maduro was accused of setting an aid convoy on fire. This was used as justification to have this U.S.-backed coup, backed by a lot of other international actors as well. It doesn't go well. Ultimately, Maduro is still in power. So rather than the critique being, hey, maybe we shouldn't be messing around in other countries and fomenting coups anymore because this doesn't ever work out well, instead, Senator Chris Murphy's complaint is that we aren't effective enough at our coup making, that we are too bumbling and incompetent when we go forward with these coups. So he says, it's a long thread. You should read the whole thing if you want, your head to completely explode, as mine did yesterday. But here's some of the key points. He says, then it got real embarrassing. In April 2019, we tried to organize a kind of coup, but it became a debacle. Everyone who told us they'd rally to Guaido got cold feet, and the plan failed publicly and spectacularly, making America look foolish and weak. Since then, it's been a running comedy of errors, et cetera, et cetera. There was another piece here that I wanted to highlight, if we can throw up the next screen. Now, having wasted a year trying to work on a transition plan, Guaido is boycotting the upcoming legislative elections. So what then? Keep recognizing Guaido as the nation's leader, even if he doesn't control the military, the government, or even hold office. It's a total disaster. That part I do agree with. And after a year and a half, Maduro is stronger, American influence is weaker, and there is no viable path to restore democracy in Venezuela, a case study in international relations malpractice. Now, it tells you everything, by the way, that their version of democracy is like the dude that we wanted to install, who was not elected as the country's leader. And this is not about saying that Maduro is amazing or great or any of that, right? Deeply problematic. People were suffering, although part of that was from our own sanctions in the region. But it just says absolutely everything, that your critique is not, hey, maybe we should stop trying to foment coups because it doesn't work out well. It's like, let's be better at the coups that we do, guys.
Our imperialism isn't working correctly, right? Like, there's a stutter in the engine.
Not even competent enough to have effective imperialism. Yeah. What's going on?
Like, actually, I didn't see that critique of the Trump administration coming. That, like, they were bad at imperialism, like, wasn't on my bingo card for this year. I will say that.
They critique them on that all the time. I mean, Susan Rice yesterday, who is, of course, a top VP contender, I think it's very likely that she'll end up getting the nod. She was like, oh, you can't pull troops out of Germany because it's a gift to Putin. I mean, that whole thing as well, right? Similar vein.
But what I was surprised by is that this was from Chris Murphy, who's actually generally been pretty good, I think, on the issue of U.S. involvement in foreign wars. He has been pressing very hard to get U.S. troops out of Yemen, to get, U.S. participation out of Yemen.
Yeah.
He sponsored a resolution with Mike Lee, actually a Republican, on this issue that Trump had to veto. They passed it out of the Senate and the House that said, we shouldn't be participating in Yemen. Trump had to veto it. So he's been very good on these questions.
Yeah.
But this is just kind of out of left field, like, hey, the imperialism machine not doing its job.
But, they all bought into this narrative. And this was like, I covered this pretty extensively here. The thing that was used as the flashpoint to justify why we had to get involved was this international outrage over, we sent in an aid convoy and Maduro's people set it on fire. How could this monster set aid intended for his own starving people on fire? Media picks this up and runs with it. The Congress picks it up and runs with it. I don't know if you remember, Guaido got a standing ovation from Democrats and Republicans at the State of the Union. And then lo and behold, little while later, once the train has left the station in terms of backing Guaido and this whole failed coup attempt, then it comes out, oh, by the way, that whole story about Maduro setting the aid convoy on fire, That's actually not what happened. It was actually the Guaidó forces, the people who were behind him, who ended up starting the fire. So the initial sort of spark and conflagration turns out to be a complete and total farce, which often happens, by the way. It's the same thing in Bolivia with Evo Morales. The justification was, oh, the election was rigged. The election was flawed. We've got to get in. We've got to force him out of office because the election was rigged. The election was flawed. And then, down the road, a few months later, once he's already out, once he's already, in Mexico, I think in exile, essentially, then it comes out, well, by the way, the election actually wasn't rigged. And actually, the problem was the studies that said the election was rigged. Those were incorrect. New York Times does the story about how everybody got it wrong. But the damage is already done, right? It's already changed. And so here you have, once again, people taking all the wrong lessons from this. And Joe Biden had said something very similar in this regard of basically like, we need to stand with democracy and back Juan Guaidó, and Trump is not effective enough in his coup making. And it just makes me crazy, because it seems like no matter what we vote for, no matter what the American people want in terms of their foreign policy, they always get some version of the same thing.
Well, we haven't learned anything, especially in Latin America. This always confuses me. It's like, yes, we need to pay attention to what's going on there. They're very close neighbors. We work with a lot of these countries. But this idea that we can somehow go and pull the strings, we've literally been trying to do this and we have with terrible outcomes.
Yes.
Since the 1980s.
Yes.
And I think part of it is that you have this whole school of bureaucrats in DC that has been schooled in this vein, right? That we must have an effective policy toward Latin America, except that boils down and distills to nothing but coup making, right? Like, we have no other effective means of doing it.
Yeah.
Because we actually don't have the intellectual muscle to do that. We know one way, and this is it. And I think it just goes to the point that Trump put Elliot Abrams in charge of South America, Venezuela in particular, and it's like the guy who was the architect of, the Contras, and that did not go well.
Right, yes.
But although I think it's kind of ironic that Murphy's criticizing the Trump administration for not being effective, and if Elliot Abrams can't, pull the strings in the most appropriate way, maybe that's a good thing.
Well, in fairness, in the long thread, Chris Murphy does say, maybe we shouldn't have gone with Elliot Abrams on this. Probably didn't help our cause, really.
Maybe we should have thought
Elliot Abrams. And, Trump bringing in John Bolton is like, what do you expect when you bring John Bolton into your administration? But anyway, just another wonderful story about how things unfold here in D.C. Tomorrow on Rising, Washington Post economic reporter Jeff Stein is going to share his phenomenal reporting on the latest with the stimulus package deal making. Also, senior reporter for Reveal Aaron Glantz is going to tell us more about a potential housing crisis, and Huffington Post reporter Dan Marins is going to join us as well with the latest in politics. Please like and share this video. It really does help others to find us. Of course, also subscribe so you never miss a video. Everybody have a great day. And Rachel, thank you so much. This is your last day with us. You've done a phenomenal job. It's been so much fun having you. And of course, you'll be back all the time on Rising anyway.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. It's been a pleasure.
All right, everybody, have a great day.